Welcome to PH Insight. Know the force behind the flag. Whether it's warships, fighter jets, or the next big defense move, if it matters to Philippine security, it's here. The border conflict between Thailand and Cambodia has marked a historic milestone in the life of Sweden's pride in aviation, the Saab JAS-39 Gripen fighter jet. For the first time ever, this Swedish-made warplane has been used in actual combat, and its deployment may have far-reaching implications, not only for Thailand's future defense acquisitions, but also for countries like the Philippines, which are eyeing the Gripen to bolster their own air forces. During the brief but intense clashes along the Thai-Cambodian border earlier this year, the Royal Thai Air Force, RTAF, confirmed that it deployed its JAS-39C Gripens to carry out airstrikes on Cambodian military targets. This marks the first time the Gripen, a platform promoted as a versatile but defensive multi-role aircraft, has been used in kinetic action. While Thailand justified the strikes under Article 51 of the UN Charter, asserting the right to self-defense against cross-border military threats, the development has drawn scrutiny from Swedish authorities, particularly the Swedish Foreign Ministry, which oversees arms exports under strict guidelines grounded in human rights and international law. According to a report from Breaking Defense, Stockholm is now reviewing the incident and has not yet approved Thailand's request for a new batch of the more advanced JAS-39E/F Gripen. The concern in Stockholm isn't merely about the legality of the strikes but the precedent they set, the Gripen, Sweden's flagship defense export, being used for offensive military action against another sovereign nation. The RTAF insists that the airstrikes were necessary and lawful. A spokesperson explained that the Gripens, along with F-16 Fighting Falcons, were used against military targets that posed threats to Thailand's national security. Thai officials emphasized that the operations were conducted in full compliance with international humanitarian law, aiming to protect civilian populations and avoid escalation. This incident comes shortly after Thailand chose Saab's JAS-39E/F Gripen over the US-made F-16 Block 7072 Viper in a high-profile defense deal. The selection was seen as a strategic move to deepen ties with Sweden and to maintain a degree of operational independence from the US, whose weapons systems often come with stricter end-use monitoring and political strings attached. This incident comes shortly after Thailand chose Saab's JAS-39E/F Gripen over the US-made F-16 Block 7072 Viper in a high-profile defense deal. The selection was seen as a strategic move to deepen ties with Sweden and to maintain a degree of operational independence from the US, whose weapons systems often come with stricter end-use monitoring and political strings attached. But now, the Thai military's use of the Gripen in combat could ironically jeopardize that very relationship, as Sweden reassesses its willingness to continue supplying advanced fighter jets to a buyer that has demonstrated a readiness to use them offensively. The Gripen's combat debut may have triggered alarm bells not only in Sweden but also in Manila, where the Philippine government has been strongly considering the JAS-39 Gripen to meet its long-delayed multi-role fighter, MRF, requirement. With a limited budget and urgent operational needs, the Philippine Air Force, PAF, sees the Gripen as a cost-effective, reliable, and easy-to-maintain platform for defending its skies, especially in the West Philippine Sea. But now, the Thai-Cambodia episode may force Manila to ask a critical question: will Sweden allow the Philippines to use Gripens in actual combat if needed? Sweden has long been admired for its strict arms export control policies, rooted in a strong commitment to peace, neutrality, and international humanitarian law. Every major weapons deal is evaluated not just from a commercial standpoint, but also for its potential political, ethical, and legal implications. These restrictions have led to deals being delayed, scaled back, or outright cancelled when the buyer country's actions raised concerns. Sweden's arms authority insists on end-user commitments that often restrict how and where exported systems can be used. For countries like the Philippines, facing not just terrorist threats but also the possibility of maritime conflict with China, these limitations could become a major obstacle. After all, what use is a billion-peso fighter jet if it can't be deployed in wartime? One concern that Philippine defense planners now face is how Sweden would view combat deployments against domestic insurgents or terrorist groups. While the New People's Army, NPA, is designated as a terrorist organization by the European Union, other groups may not meet that classification under EU guidelines. Suppose the Philippine military uses Gripens to strike a non-EU designated group in a remote area of Mindanao. Could that provoke a political reaction from Stockholm? Could future deliveries or spare parts be delayed or suspended? This isn't theoretical. Other countries, most notably Pakistan with its US-made F-16s, have faced similar constraints. The US has imposed limits on how and where these jets can be used, particularly against India. Even rumors of misuse have led to temporary sanctions and diplomatic fallout. The more troubling scenario for the Philippines involves not insurgents, but a state-on-state conflict, specifically, with China. Beijing has built up militarized artificial islands inside the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone, EEZ, claiming sovereignty over much of the South China Sea. In the event of an escalation or open conflict, the Philippine Air Force would likely need to use its MRFs for precision strikes against Chinese assets within its own EEZ. These would be legitimate acts of self-defense under international law, but would Sweden see it the same way? Would Stockholm allow the Gripen to be used against a powerful, nuclear-armed state like China? Would it consider such action defensive or offensive? And would it be willing to support the PAF in maintaining and resupplying those jets during conflict? These are the uncomfortable but necessary questions that Philippine defense leaders, particularly Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro, are now grappling with. Teodoro has already voiced his concern about overly restrictive end-user agreements, saying in a recent interview that what we do not want is to buy, have orders, have deliveries and not being able to use them for their optimal use and just have them flying air shows. That sentiment underscores a growing doctrine shift in the Philippine military. The goal is not to acquire advanced platforms as symbols of modernization, but as combat tools ready for real-world scenarios. Jets that can't be used in battle are seen as expensive liabilities, not strategic assets. Ironically, Sweden's ethical approach may push the Philippines closer to the very country it's been cautious about relying on, the United States. Despite its own end-use restrictions, the F-16 Block 7072 comes with unmatched support, interoperability with allies, and a more predictable political framework, especially given the renewed strength of U.S.-Philippine military ties under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA. If Sweden delays or fails to clarify its stance on combat use, Manila may reconsider its tentative preference for the Gripen and pivot back to the F-16. Or, it may explore emerging alternatives like South Korea's KF-21 Boramae, still in development but promising fewer political strings in the future. The Thailand-Cambodia border conflict may have been a brief and localized skirmish, but its ripple effects are being felt across the region. For Sweden, it's a moment of reckoning. How will it balance its arms control ethics with its ambitions to remain a global defense supplier? For the Philippines, it's a critical decision point. It must weigh the military value of the Gripen against the strategic risk of political limitations. The country is not just buying jets, it is investing in national survival, air dominance, and deterrence. In the end, whether the Gripen becomes the Philippines' frontline fighter depends not just on its radar range or missile load, but on whether it will be allowed to fight when the nation needs it most.